The twists and turns of political fortunes. Japan's Taro Aso juggles the U.S. alliance and party woes, while Venezuela's Hugo Chavez gets the green light to keep running. The orbiting garbage heap. A satellite collision highlights the danger of too much traffic and too little control in outer space. Up first, Hillary Clinton in Asia. America's new Secretary of State reassures Japan over the alliance and seeks to strengthen the partnership with China. All of this and more on World Insight.
You're watching World Insight with me, James Chow. 30 minutes of all the latest on what's happening in our world today. Thanks for joining us for that, and stay seated for all that's still to come. Now this week, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton kicked off her first foreign visit. The destination was Asia. A Secretary of State's debut trip is always a major event, steeped in symbolism and passed for clues to the new administration's diplomatic policy. Clinton kicked off that trip in Japan and ended it here in China. Her message was clear: to reaffirm the U.S. alliance with Tokyo and to build a productive relationship with Beijing.
The inaugural journey of Hillary Clinton as the U.S. Secretary of State got underway. Her celebrity brought glitter and high expectations. And many see her move of choosing Japan as the first stop as a gesture to reassure America's staunch ally.
The U.S.-Japanese alliance is vitally important to both of our countries, to the Asia-Pacific region, and to the world. And our partnership stretches back half a century. Its foundation has been and always will be a commitment to our shared security and prosperity.
Clinton also invited Japanese Prime Minister Taro Aso to Washington next week, making him the first foreign leader that President Barack Obama will meet in the White House. Clinton's assurance of Japan as its closest ally soothed Japan's jitters over possible neglect by the Obama administration. Last year, Clinton declared in Foreign Affairs magazine that the U.S. relationship with China will be the most important bilateral relationship in the world this century. That statement raised eyebrows with many Japanese. Since the end of the Second World War, Japan has been under the military protection of the U.S. The 1960 Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security laid the basis for their military relations. The presence of U.S. troops in Japan is a constant reminder to the Japanese. In a recent interview with Chinese media, former Japanese Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs Shotaro Yachi said, "The Japanese-U.S. alliance left two negative factors for Japan. The first, Japan needs the U.S. military protection, and it leads to its full reliance on the U.S. The second, Japan wants to have its own diplomatic policy, but it has to follow the U.S. in the end." Facing a tough situation in the anti-terrorism war in Afghanistan, the Obama administration hopes for greater support there from Japan. But the opposition of Japanese voters to involvement in the war and the instability of its government makes it hard for Japan to move forward.
In the past several years, the U.S.-Japanese alliance has had some problems. For example, the tension between the U.S. military and the local Japanese caused by the misconduct of U.S. soldiers. That's why Japan feared it would be bypassed in the global agenda of the new U.S. administration.
In contrast with Japan's relationship with the U.S., China's has traveled a much tougher road. Over the years, the U.S. policy toward China has developed from containment to engagement. Last month, the two countries marked the 30th anniversary of bilateral ties. During the celebrations, Zygmunt Brzezinski, the U.S. National Security Advisor to President Jimmy Carter, promoted the idea of a G2 between the U.S. and China. The idea is the U.S.'s relations with China should parallel its relations with Europe and Japan. And Clinton took a similar tone before her Asia trip.
You know very well how important China is and how essential it is that we have a positive, cooperative relationship. It is vital to peace and prosperity not only in the Asia-Pacific region, but worldwide.
For China and the U.S., a broad agenda lies ahead. Against the backdrop of the global financial crisis, economic issues topped the agenda. The U.S. is China's biggest customer, and China is the largest holder of U.S. Treasury bonds. The economic interdependence requires cooperation between the two countries. The DPRK nuclear issue continues to be one of Washington's major concerns. Within the existing six-party mechanism, China and the U.S. have worked well in the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The Obama administration considers its war on terror in Afghanistan and Pakistan a priority. As a major power in the region, China has a part to play. Collaboration between China and the U.S. on clean energy and greater efficiency offers great opportunity to deepen relations.
The agenda between China and the U.S. is broad and can't be summarized with several sentences. The deep reason is that the world is changing and the status of countries is changing. A single country cannot solve the world problems alone.
In the speech prior to her visit, Clinton drew on Chinese tradition as a guide for the U.S.-China partnership today.
An ancient Chinese story tells of warring feudal states whose soldiers find themselves on a boat together, crossing a wide river in a storm. Instead of fighting one another, they work together and survive. From this story comes a Chinese aphorism that says, "When you are in a common boat, you need to cross the river peacefully together."
Clinton's statement was seen by many as a positive message to China on bilateral relations. But some Japanese commentators argue that in the Chinese story it was two adversaries that were on the same boat. The different interpretations reflect the subtle relations between China, Japan, and the U.S.
I won't describe the relations between China, the U.S. and Japan as a triangle, as good bilateral relations don't mean harm to the third party. For the U.S., its alliance with Japan is the basis of its Asian policy. Although China's strategic importance is increasing, its relations with the U.S. is still a complex interdependence.
During Clinton's visit to Japan, she described her concept of good foreign policy as promoting balance and harmony in the world. Since her role as U.S. Secretary of State has just begun, the realization of the concept may take time. A week before Clinton's visit, China's Red Star Chorus warmed Tokyo's Opera House with the sounds of goodwill. It underscores that for China, Japan, and the U.S., a balanced relationship is surely in the interests of the Asia-Pacific and beyond.
Now, with that, Hillary Clinton has set her tone of foreign policy as pushing for more balance and harmony. While in Asia, harmony may mean that the U.S.'s good relationship with Japan doesn't compete with a good relationship with China. Coming up next, the political fortunes of Japanese Prime Minister Taro Aso and Venezuela's leader Hugo Chavez. Stay with us for all that and more right here on World Insight.